The Switch sucks because Nintendo's bad.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Everything's Taken, the only podcast where if you're a kid now, you're definitely a squid now.
Oh my god.
Come on.
Why does every podcast end up starting with you saying something and then me saying oh my god and hanging my head in shame?
This is the traditional way of starting the ET podcast. So what? How are you? It's good to be with you again. It's been a little while.
Yeah, I'm good actually. It's the apocalypse here in Vancouver right now. We have some wildfires burning and they've been going for about 3 weeks and there's just ash in the sky. Like the sky is, you can't see blue. It's all like yellow. It's really weird. It's honestly kind of cool, but I really want the fires to stop because it's giving me a headache.
So it's like the very first episode of Pokemon, the anime, where at the very end, Ho-Oh is flying through the sky.
No, it's not quite like that in the slightest. But I see what you're going for.
Well, what? Come on, let's introduce our guest here. We don't keep him waiting.
No, okay. So we have actually a long time friend of mine who I've never met in person. We have Shane from Rerez.
Hey everybody, how you doing? It's great to be here.
I'm really excited to have you here. You have one of the cleanest, nicest, best channels on YouTube, in my opinion.
And I wish I updated it more often. Because, yeah.
Well, you've been busy.
I have been very busy.
You have been busy, which is something we're going to talk about today, something really cool that you're doing. Are you working on any videos right now?
So, I want to do some more worst ever episodes. We have a ton of terrible video game systems that have been sent in recently. In fact, we have a video game console that doesn't actually hook up to a TV. So, capturing that is one of the most difficult things in the world. I created a rig that can capture it, but it doesn't work. So now I have to figure out a different way to do it. It's insane. There is
what do you mean?
Well, it
doesn't hook up to a TV.
It's a video game console built into a projector. And that's how it works. So
that's interesting.
It's got a lot of games, but they're all inside the projector. You can't take them out. And there's no video out. So I have to find a method to record it that doesn't look crappy. Because no matter what you do, a projector is never going to look 100%. And when you start recording it, it just creates this whole terrible thing. So it's been a little bit of a rush to get that one to work.
You find the weirdest and quirkiest plug and plays and consoles. And I was watching one the other day. Actually, it was that little mini arcade one with like the bunch of games. You made an hour-long video about it. How's that? How long does it take to play all of those games and then make a video like that?
So that's the worst plug and play ever too. Yeah. And that one, actually, I have it right here. That's the Retro Play 200.
Oh, you have one. You have one boxed in package.
This is the one I actually used in the video. I was just very careful with, boxing it so that I could actually open it up. But yeah, that took about 5 days to play all the video games on it. And it's like because when you do a video like that, you think, I'll just play like the game for 2 seconds. No, you got to sit there and try and beat every single video game because there might be something hidden somewhere in the video game that you might miss. So there were games that your mind just melts. The fact that you got to be sitting there and playing these really terrible games. But once in a while, something stupid comes out and you can turn that into a video. Then editing it, shooting it. It took about, I want to say, a couple of weeks to get that video done properly, and then to do the whole thing without a script, because there's no script during the entire video. It's just me memorizing what I've played and then knowing to say things at a certain point. And then when I'm shooting the entire video, I know instinctively, like I'm editing it in my head as I'm going along, and then that makes it work out that way. So yeah, it's a pretty long process, but I like how it looks at the end.
Oh, it ended up being a fantastic video. Something that I admire about your channel so much, and it's something that I honestly for the last year, and since I've seen your channel and seen the way you stylize it, I've always strived to get my channel to a point where when you look at one of my thumbnails or look at one of my videos, you know that you're watching a beat 'em ups video. Like, you can tell by a thumbnail that it's going to be a beat 'em ups video without even looking at the title. And I strive for that because of your channel, because just every single thumbnail of yours, like everything about the video and the style of it, it's like, that's a Rerez video before you look at the title, before you look at anything. And it's so like legit, honestly, so legit. It's the way it all looks and comes together.
Oh, thanks, man. Yeah, I
honestly do love it.
I've been trying really hard to get the channel to look like a specific way and stuff. And one of the things I've been doing lately is I've been trying to move away from just like modern video game reviews and stuff like that, because I feel like there's a lot of people already doing such a great job, and I don't want to compete with them. And I find myself like sitting there watching everyone. I watch ACG, I watch Total Biscuit, I just watch everybody. Anyone that's talking about video games, specifically people I don't agree with, because I like to hear people's alternate opinions on what they feel about a video game, and that gives me like a unique perspective on the game, I feel. But yeah, lately I've been just trying to find something that's kind of more long-lasting type content, and that's what the worst ever really is, because nobody really wants to play these systems. Like, I haven't met anybody that's like, oh boy, I can't wait to play this. So yeah.
But that's the interesting and unique thing about it. I mean, like, the worst evers that you do are genuinely kind of stuff that even I haven't seen. And you do a lot of other stuff like quirky console accessories and controllers and everything. So like, your channel is pretty well unique. And like Wood alluded to earlier, it's probably one of the most clean cut and well shot channels out there on YouTube. It's the quality is just like second to none, very professional. So when we look towards the YouTube skies and say, oh, what would we like to be? Rerez is one of the names there. So when Wood said, oh, we're getting Rerez on, I was like, oh, that's great. So we're really interested to talk to you about your channel and learn more about what goes into episodes and some more unique things about your channel. So yeah.
Oh, thank you, man.
I really do like how you said about watching other videos, that opinions you don't agree on, to get a different view. That's such a great quality to have. I feel like so many people, especially on YouTube, have their way of thinking about something, or their beliefs or their opinions, and they either they watch the content that relates to them, or they make the content and they don't really pay attention to what the other things that are going on around them and the other opinions out there. And that's such a great quality, to be able to take those opinions on board and maybe even shape your own opinion out of that, change your own opinion out of that. But just having that, it's such a way of being not naive on YouTube.
It's really important to me. I feel like video game reviews in general, like, everyone's going to feel like a different thing. There's certain games I really don't like. There's certain games I do. And I like to watch reviews of games I don't like and see what people actually liked about them, because then I can understand why they liked it, then go back and play the game and kind of figure out more about it. The whole reason that really started to happen is when I was doing the Positive series, because when I grew up, my mom would go to like a discount store and she would buy a bunch of really crappy NES games, but I didn't know that. As far as I was associated, hey, these are like great. Oh, Back to the Future on the NES? Awesome, Mom. Thank you. Right? And that was like one of my favorite games to play when I was a kid, because I didn't get the big games. I got the crappy ones. And I didn't know that. She didn't know that, right? So these were just the games you played. So I grew up playing these NES games, thinking nothing of them. And then when I grew up, I had more of an appreciation for them. And that's why I did Positives. But that entire perspective change made me think about the way other people look at stuff. And one thing I learned to drop around the time the Dreamcast fell was like a sense of being a fanboy or like loving a company too much, because that really didn't work for me when I had this entire Dreamcast collection that ended up being worth like $2 the next day, because the value of it just went down. And I didn't understand a lot of that stuff, but I couldn't understand why a console I thought was so good could be so undervalued and people just threw it away. And a lot of that was marketing. A lot of that was just the way that Sega sold the console directly to me. And after that happened, I started to realize that games are like a very different thing, and they're constantly evolving. So the entire series that I've done has been, whenever I go to do a video, I always try to remove myself, my own personal opinions, from the perspective of that system or that game or whatever it is, and then just look at it from like a different way that I don't think a lot of other people tend to look at consoles and games at. Because if you do it that way, you're going to have a very different perspective on everything.
Absolutely. And it makes your videos so much more accessible. Like, it's funny because my videos are so opinionated from my point of view. And while I do say in every video, this is just my opinion, your own opinion, they are still so opinionated from my point of view. And I touch a lot of modern stuff too, so my videos are very, very alternate universe to yours right now. But does it still surprise you though when someone watches your video and just has just like this blaringly different opinion, even when you try and stay biased? Does that ever like shock you with the opinions people have?
No, because I tend to have shocking points of view. When I said the Wii U was going to bomb, I think a lot of people didn't agree with me on that. And then when I explained one of the fundamental reasons for it was the Wii U gamepad being its problem. See, personally, love the Wii U game, like the Wii U games on there. I think it's a fantastic, like it's got the best first-party collection of games still, I think, like from all the modern systems.
Absolutely, it does.
And the only problem with the Wii U is its gamepad, is its marketing, is its name. So it's a lot of things wrong. But the games, man, like there was no problem with those games they made. Pikmin 3 is a fantastic experience. I mean, there's really not a lot bad there, but that gamepad changes the perspective of somebody playing a video game, and it pulls them out of the experience every time they use it. The console itself isn't too bad. It's a pretty basic thing, but there's not enough space in it for downloading games. Then you've got their online infrastructure wasn't properly implemented. Then third-party support wasn't very good. And there's a whole bunch of things that add on to those problems. And I start to like step back and go, okay, let's see what's really wrong with the system right now before anybody says anything. And when I start to identify the controller itself being an issue, and funny enough, around the time I started really hammering in on the Wii U and paying attention to its controller and what was wrong with its controller, I started designing a controller, so it kind of entered into the same realm that I started to really pay attention to that stuff. But yeah, looking at all these really terrible video game controllers gave me this really good idea for what might be wrong with the GameCube controller. Not GameCube controller. That's a great controller. The Wii U controller, really is. Yeah, the Wii U controller just had its issues. Like the biggest one, when you're playing a video game like Tetris, anything like that, you're playing the video game, you're not looking at the controller, you're looking at the screen, and you get sucked into the world of the video game because you're one-to-one. The controller just disappears. That will never happen with the Wii U game. Because with the Wii U gamepad, you always have to pull away from one screen to look at the other, and then to look back. And if the game incites you to do that, then it actually destroys your level of interaction with that game. And a lot of people have always used the argument that, well, with the Wii U gamepad, if there's a map on the screen, you can just look down at the map. Well, does that matter? Because you're still not looking at the screen up there, and the game is still continuing to move forward while you're looking down there, so you might as well have just pushed the pause button. And the biggest argument was always that never made any sense. So you can see why Nintendo even acknowledged that by, in the latest Zelda game that they released, they didn't include the map on the screen. It's just like the Switch version in every way. And I think that's like a self-admission of having an issue with that they didn't really realize when they were designing the Wii U, but at the time it seemed to be a good idea, but it really wasn't.
See, that's the best way that anybody can describe the problem with the Wii U is the Wii U was a flawed console from the start, and it all really kind of boiled down to the name. And the Wii U was a necessary evolution to get to the Switch, which the Switch is doing really well because it's a one unit. And I think what they were trying to accomplish with the Wii U was basically have the DS kind of accessibility, but in your living room. So, you know, the front screen here, bottom screen here. But the problem is, like you said, Shane, is when you're breaking eye contact from point A to point B to look at a map, it just felt very unnecessary. So that's why, like, you know, the Wii U overall bombed, and that's why they're porting all the games over to the Switch to try and hopefully recoup for their losses. Because, like, I was reading a thread on Reddit the other day, and people were saying, "Oh, Donkey Kong Tropical Freeze was great, but why did it sell so poorly?" And like the top comment was because it was on the Wii U, and that's exactly why. The games were so accessible, so fun, but they were just on a poorly implemented platform. So, I mean, once we get over to it, I'd really be interested to hear more about your Kickstarter controller and figure out what from the Wii U made you want to make a more ergonomic and more, a better controller that makes you connect with a game. Because when you connect with a game, you forget about the controller because it's just an extension of your hands and your mind. And that's the problem I had with the Wii U as well. You just can't connect with the games as well as you want to or as well as you should.
Yeah,
I actually I agree with that for the most part. There was a couple of games I actually enjoyed. I enjoyed Zombie U, and that pulled away from the screen so much. I don't know why I enjoyed it. it's one of them weird things where like I enjoyed Enter the Matrix when it first came out. Like there's like every now and then I'll enjoy a terrible game. Like I enjoyed Walking Dead Survival Instinct. I'm really weird. Just every now and then a game will come out that
absolutely not. No.
What?
And Enter the Matrix had the hacking mini game on it that was so amazing, and I loved that experience. There's nothing wrong with that. Like on the original Xbox, Steel Battalion is this huge controller that you sit in your living room, right? That pulls you away from the experience while you're playing because you constantly have to be looking at the controller. That's a part of the experience. See, as hardcore gamers, we look at the Wii U and we think, oh, that's awesome. And of course it is. For us, it works, right? For us, that experience of having it there works for us. Like we can enjoy Zombie U. We can enjoy Pikmin 3. All the other Wii U games that I have. I even, honest to God, there's like Nintendo Land. There's a lot of really fun Nintendo Land games. There really is.
The Zelda one is pretty fun to play with a friend.
Exactly. Yeah. And the only reason why that is the problem as gamers, as hardcore gamers, we think what's good for us is good for everyone else, but that's not true, right? Right now, I can list every single video game console that has ever been made from the beginning to the current day right now in direct order. Most people can't do that, and most people don't care to do that. And and with the Wii U, most people don't know the difference between a Wii and a Wii U. They think of it as a tablet edition. To this day, literally went into the store a month ago, and there was a family there, and they were asking about the Wii U tablet edition, and I didn't know what they were talking about, and I was just listening to them talk from the side, and they were actually talking about the Wii U Switch or something like that, and it started to be like, oh my God, they're getting confused with that. They don't, but it's because Nintendo released a Wii U, and then they released a Switch, so they thought, oh, it must just be a portable Wii U then. That's what it is, right? But it's just this messaging that gets confused and stuff. But with the Switch, it changes things because it legitimately is a different name. But with the Wii U, it was just so close to the Wii, that caused issues. And the way you control the game made it a little bit more confusing for people. And I think those are the things that really just pushed away from the average consumer, the average gamer, that they simply couldn't understand it because average gamers are simply not like us.
The Switch having much better marketing and a different name really did help it. And like Nintendo made like Super Bowl commercials. They have commercials everywhere you look. They have all these review copies going out to almost every single YouTuber. Like they did a really a much better job at pushing this one. Something I did find funny though was someone shared on my Facebook recently, I think it was someone here in Canada, that they went to a local Target and it said there was like a clear picture of a Switch on the shelf, but like the console wasn't there because it's sold out. And there was a little tag on it that said all Wii accessories and consoles can be found behind the counter. And like that was in only a Switch section. So like even like people at Target are still getting confused.
Yeah, but that's Nintendo's fault though. Like their marketing and branding for that 10-year period of time was just mixed messaging, and people are still suffering for it. I mean, obviously, you know, we as the enlightened few hardcore gamers, retro collectors, we obviously know the difference, but the average casual gamer grandma that goes in there to buy little Johnny a Wii U doesn't know the difference and gets confused when the Best Buy employee tries to say, hey, you know, here's this, here's that. Well, I don't know what to get. And that's Nintendo's fault that people are still like, you know, they don't know. But maybe the average person just doesn't care to, you know, educate themselves either. So it's just this mixed thing that we're still in. But the Switch will eventually resolve that.
Yeah, I mean, I there's a lot of people I see to this day still. And in fact, my mom, I know this for a fact. She can tell me what the current version of the PlayStation is. But I remember when I got my Dreamcast, that was a PlayStation. I remember when I got the GameCube, that was a PlayStation. I remember when I got the Xbox 360. That was a PlayStation, right? Like they stayed PlayStation because Xbox has kept the name consistent, but the numbering systems changed with them. So it's not just Xbox 2, and then Xbox 3. It's Xbox, gigantic number, 360. Now it's 1. That marketing-wise is confusing. A complete stupid thing to do. It's bad. Which you can see is actually causing issues on the market right now. That's why they're probably not selling too many, because now you have the Xbox One S, now the Xbox One X, and now you have the Xbox One. It's going to cause a huge group of issues. Nintendo changing their name from their consoles was a big deal, from the NES to the Super Nintendo to the Nintendo 64. You're still technically going up, and 64 sounds like it's more modern, but then you went to the GameCube, it didn't even have really Nintendo in the title, right? Like you didn't call the Nintendo 64 the 64, and you didn't call the Super Nintendo just the Super. It was still the Super Nintendo. Nintendo was in the name. Right. As soon as you got to the GameCube, that changed. As soon as you got to the Wii, it was the Nintendo Wii, or just the Wii. But it didn't matter because they marketed it to a completely different group of people. But no matter what happens, the Wii was so prolific for that era that it came out that it's still going to be called the Wii no matter what for the next couple of generations. But Sony has always kept this smart. Even if they were having damage happen around the launch of the PlayStation 3, it still remained the PlayStation 3. So they've consistently kept this brand that has remained pretty strong throughout its life. And that's a smart move. They've got now generations of this one console name that everybody knows. And the other guys keep changing their names, and that does hurt. I mean, that's probably why Apple hasn't changed the iPhone name to anything other than iPhone. You know, it just keeps it going, and it makes sense, and it has an impact on the populace, and just works that way.
It's a fantastic point that I actually never thought of, like the GameCube not being Nintendo GameCube and being the first one to not do that great. That's a really fantastic point that I've honestly never drawn the correlation in my head.
What was the first Nintendo console at that point that wasn't widely referred to as the Nintendo whatever? So there was the Nintendo Entertainment System, Super Nintendo Entertainment System, the Nintendo 64. Well, the Game Boy's kind of excluded from that, and nobody gives a shit about the Virtual Boy. But like the Nintendo GameCube, like you don't see that. But when Nintendo refers to the GameCube internally, it's GCN. You know, have you noticed that? Like GameCube Nintendo. So it's like the word Nintendo and even the word Atari used to be like the catch-all for little Johnny and Susie are playing video games in the back room. Go play the Nintendo or the Atari. But
you know, it used to really frustrate me when my mum would do that, call everything Nintendo. But I feel like I'm getting old now because I'm always catching myself calling the 3DS my Game Boy. I do it all the time. Oh, man. Like whenever I'm going anywhere, I'm going to bring my Game Boy 3DS. I'm going to bring my 3DS. I do it every time. But actually, there was a really great segue earlier that Eric tried to start into your controller, and then I took it into this whole other direction, which I loved, and I loved where we ended up getting. But let's pull it back to this controller of yours on Kickstarter, because this is something that's really cool, actually, really impressive. I was on Reddit about 3 days ago, and I saw this controller that was going to work on every system. It was on Kickstarter, and I messaged my buddy Sean, RGT85, and I was like, Sean, have you seen this controller? Like, let's get review copies now. This thing looks badass. And he's like, you know, that's Rerez's. Like, he's working on that, right? And I was like, okay, let's get this guy on a podcast. Tell us about this controller, because I'm seriously impressed by it.
All right. Well, a little while ago, I met a small team that was working on a controller, and when they showed me the controller, it had a lot of really cool features to it, but the controller itself wasn't the main focus of what they were showing me that day. It was a completely different device. And they showed me this other device, and I wasn't really getting it, but this controller looked really cool to me because it was a controller with a screen in it. Not like I haven't seen that before, but to see one that was used in the way they were using it was really interesting to me. And I asked, what can this controller hook up to? And they told me, well, anything. We can make it work on anything. We just have to program it in. So I was like, so you guys created a universal video game controller? And they went, yeah. And I was like, market it like this. And then we kept having conversations, and then I joined on the team. And one day they came to my house, and I was explaining all these theories to video games and how they could work with the controller. I created a concept with the controller, which is called Snapback, where whenever I'm playing like a game where there's like some kind of combo in it, like back punch or whatever it is, or half circle punch. What I've done with the controller is we created this little thing where you hold the back paddle and then you put in your little combo and let go, and then the other back paddle you push it and it replays your combo. So that's called Snapback. And you can record instant combos and play them back whenever you want. And I thought that would be a really cool idea to do something like that, because this controller allows us to do anything. What I really want to do is, when I was talking to the guys, was like, let's make a controller that can play any PC game ever. And at the time when we were talking about that, our engineer Sean, who is like the smartest person I've ever met, he's able to come up with like these huge, really complex things and break them down and make them into a functional working design. And what he did was he created this interface on the controller that allows you to select any keyboard input, any mouse input, and map it directly into the controller. So I was like, all right, I took the controller home, and this is like an earlier model than the one everybody sees on Kickstarter, And I just started testing it. I threw every game I could possibly throw at it. Everything worked. Even if the game didn't have gamepad support and it just used a mouse and keyboard, we just mapped it to mouse and keyboard. So I was doing things like playing Dune 2 and Doom 2, like both RTS and first-person shooters that traditionally did not have controller input, and they were like easy to work. And for the things that were a little bit more complex, we could put macros in the controller so that we could just have one button push that instantly did something we wanted to do. So I'm confident with this controller with the macro settings that you could literally play games like Dota 2 and
Wow.
like StarCraft,
League of Legends.
League of Legends, yeah, anything really.
Wow.
And just like play it with macros and like do an instant Zerg rush and stuff like that. Now, I'm not saying that the controller instantly replaces what a mouse and keyboard can do, because a mouse and a keyboard provide far more direct like input.
Right.
But in terms of just playing like an old game like Commander Keen, if you want and you don't have like the original drivers for that or anything, whatever, using like a really old version, you can just use this controller and set up everything instantly. Believe it or not, Half-Life on Steam doesn't have controller support. Don't know why. I plugged it up with an Xbox One controller, and when I tried it, it didn't work. So I just plugged in the controller with the alt controller, plugging into the game, and instead of turning off the game and going back to the menu and setting up the settings or going off to some other program on my computer, turning on my cell phone to do anything, you just turn on the controller and instantly put in what you need to do. And if something didn't work or feel right, you just went straight back into the settings of the controller and fixed it without ever having to turn off the game. So it's kind of cool if you're like playing in some tournament and suddenly like there's some reason, like, okay, here, great example for this. If you're playing a game like Battlefield and you've got first-person shooter controls, and then eventually you want to get into a vehicle or something, and the vehicle has different controls, well, you can set up a profile, so as soon as you get into that vehicle, you can instantly switch to a different profile that can change up the controls exactly how you want. And a lot of games do offer that, right? But they don't offer that completely in the controller. Great thing that I love Splatoon 2. Splatoon 2 doesn't give you controller options, but with our controller, you not only can have all the controller options you could ever want, but you can put in the combos and things that are simply not possible with the Switch right now.
I'm almost speechless. Like, honestly, like that is one of the coolest things I've heard in recent gaming news, honestly. And I'm surprised it's not being covered by more places. Like, you hear about all these controllers that are coming out, like this new Switch controller you can use on the Switch, or this new Xbox controller, or this controller you can use it on the Wii U, the Switch, and the PC, or you can use it on the Xbox, PlayStation, PC. This is the first time something like this has actually happened, where you can use this controller literally everywhere on everything. And it's like one of the coolest things I've ever heard.
Yeah, I mean, we're still working on Switch support. We're pretty confident about getting that out though, because it's the Nintendo Switch. You know, like if you're not supporting that, that's kind of an issue. But even if the controller launches without Switch support, it's updatable. So we can just throw in drivers as we go, and you can just add things. If a new console comes out, we can support it by throwing in a new driver. It's funny because like a lot of people that go to Kickstarter, sometimes they don't have a working model. Sometimes they just bring like a 3D model to the thing, or like a 3D printed model. But we didn't want to do that. So for these past 2 years, we've been working on the controller, and it's been in silence. Like I didn't want to talk about it because just in case nothing worked out exactly how we wanted it to be, we could just be silent about it and be cool. But I was getting super excited when things started working on the controller and we started figuring out things. Sean was able to design some really smart UI that switches out drivers instantly, and there's certain things you can do, like something people probably don't think about too much, but okay, let's say you're playing a game on PC and it's using an X input driver, so like an Xbox 360 input for like a controller. Well, we can switch out the drivers to simulate anything. So we can do gamepad support, X input. We can do direct input. We can switch it to anything really, as long as the driver's in the controller. So if just in case that one game that you're playing doesn't have Xbox 360 connectivity, but it does have another controller, we can simulate that controller. And if neither of those things work, you can just simulate a keyboard and mouse input and always get it to work. That even means that's like shocking. I know it sounds pretty great. Like if this was just a thing that didn't work, that would be one thing. But this is already a real controller that we had mold injected, and mold and shape a plastic case, just so we can make sure that the manufacturing will be exactly to how we tailor like specified things. And on top of all of that, the controller goes beyond that. You can even use it to do Photoshop and Adobe Premiere and control iTunes or Discord. You can do it. You can do anything you want. It's a completely customizable interface.
That's so that would be cool if you had like a Steam box or whatever it is that spits it out into your TV. If you were in like the other room and you just had your PC on your TV, you could control your entire PC from your bed with this controller.
Yep. Yeah, pretty much. That's
pretty cool.
I've tried, of all the games I tried, the weirdest one to play with this controller was Zork, right? Because Zork is a keyboard game, and that's something you really need a keyboard for. So one of that, like, I would never recommend it in 1,000 years, but you could literally just use the touchscreen on the controller to simulate keyboard inputs if you wanted. Or sorry, not the touchscreen, but the actual like direct input, and you could just create words like left, the, open, close, whatever as keyboard macro inputs and use it that way.
Gee.
I would never recommend that in a million years, but it's like something you could do with the controller if you want.
You could do it?
Right? Yeah.
I guess my question is what can't it do? Like if I'm feeling thirsty, can it go get me a coffee? Can it order me a pizza? Can I make phone calls on it?
Clearly not that. So
let's make it phone call capable and call it Engage 2.
Oh my god!
I think that's your marketing right there. I think you screwed up.
There's things the controller can't do. Things that we tried to find solutions for. Like, okay, for me, one of the things I really wanted to do is I wanted it to play the NES, the SNES, the Sega Genesis. Because when you do a Genesis input, you can do Atari and you can do a Commodore 64, I believe, too. And there's like a couple of other inputs that utilize the same thing. And I wanted to have a controller that did all those things, but those little inputs, right, the little dongles, I don't know where you find those. Like, we need to find someone that actually still manufactures those so that we can make them.
Yeah.
And then make a bunch of them for the controller. But because we're using a USB out, if we can find a way to simulate it, we like the controller can always add new drivers and stuff. So if we can find ways to connect to those devices, we can just basically create a software patch for the controller that allows us to connect to them. But usually it's all the stuff we're looking at is wireless or direct plug up with USB. As long as we can do one of those things, there's usually a way we can figure out a way around it.
So how would you do
it would
that?
Be
like for example, if it works for the Genesis, it'll work for the ColecoVision. So like, how do you do that? Like, would you just you have your USB dongle and then you would have like, you know, console whatever adapter, and then it would plug into that? Would it have to have like a chip in it or something like that, or is that something that you're really looking at? I mean, obviously it's the all controller, so
the controller has it already has like a chip in it that allows us to process stuff within the controller itself. So we can just basically program that to connect to different devices. The problem is our team is super small, so we haven't been able to design like a lot of stuff like that. For instance, one of the biggest hurdles was getting it to work on PlayStation 4 and Xbox One and Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3, because those devices have a specific connection protocol to connect to them. So we have a dongle that we include with the higher purchase order, and you plug up your controller to the dongle, and then you take the controller's connection information from your existing Xbox One or PlayStation 4 controller, and then we piggyback off of it, and then you can unplug it, and we're just using that controller's connectivity. And that's the way to connect to those systems so that you can bypass any kind of like hard tech stuff. And that dongle has its own firmware in it that we can update to connect to even more devices, just in case we ever need to do that in the future for other consoles.
That's really interesting.
This is one of the coolest things I've ever heard. And you've already blown past your goal here on Kickstarter. You had a goal of like 60,000?
It was 75,000.
Is that what I'm looking at?
Canadian. 75, it was 75,000 Canadian. I actually the price changes
so like
all over
$30
the
American.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, $30 American. And you're already at 100 just updated as I'm looking at it, pretty much 110,000. You're about 800 shy right now. And I'm sure it'll be way more by the time this video comes out next week, I think.
That's great.
So, I mean, this thing is happening. This isn't just like talking about something that you want to happen. This thing is already happening, and it's going to take the world by storm. I can feel it.
And what's really important too is I would not have associated myself with the team or been involved with them if one, I didn't trust the team, if two, it wasn't a real product. There was talks about us going to Kickstarter or releasing it a little bit earlier and stuff. And I did a video of it a little earlier on on my channel showcasing what the alt controller was. But it always was, by the time I wanted to show it off, it was a real functioning controller that did everything we say it could do. And we sent a controller out to Gizmodo, and we sent a controller out to a bunch of other websites, and they were able to just use it without us being there at their own offices and stuff, so that they could actually prove that, yeah, this does what it says it does. Obviously, the beta versions are beta, and they're not like finalized. The one that we have now is not the one we're going to send out to people, because there's things we want to fix on it here and there and improve the UI a bit, and there's just stuff like that. But we do have something that already works, so it's not like it's basically we've invented the car, we've invented the engine, the radio works. Now we just need to tune it for release.
I love it. What do you have, like a hurdle you're facing right now? Is there any big challenges coming up, or are you really just in that final process of just fine tuning it?
Well, we want to hire some more engineers to work on some more advanced feature stuff. We're kind of keeping close to the chest, because we've got some like cool ideas that we don't want to release to the public. Hiring more engineers, bringing in a couple more people on staff, and actually with the Kickstarter, making this our full-time job. Everybody goes to an office, everybody works together, because as it is right now, we're all working independently on other projects. And this was like something that we really want to work on together. So if we can go to an office 9 to 5 and just like, work on it a lot more, that's a big deal. Another hurdle is we never launched a Kickstarter before. This is our first time. So we didn't know what to expect. We didn't know how it would be. We thought people might not like it. Maybe they would like it. If they did like it, are they really going to want to put money down on it? We had all these like questions up in the air about that stuff. And one of the things we desperately want to do, and I'd say this is my personal biggest hurdle, is the current layout of the controller mimics a simplified PlayStation design, like with joysticks on the bottom. And a huge request has been to get the Xbox 360 layout. And that's one of our stretch goals. And the stretch goal is actually really far out there. It's at $1 million for that stretch goal for us to hit that. The reason is because our team actually has production and experience in the industry building devices before. So we actually know how much it's going to cost to do certain things. So for the past 2 years, we've been putting our own money and stuff into the controller. So we've already invested a large part of the R&D to do the other things. And you don't even think about this, because when other people go to Kickstarter, maybe they're not they realize the production costs. But when you think about just putting in a different kind of layout for the controller, you're probably thinking, oh, well, you just print a different kind of controller. But no, you need to buy a whole bunch of bulk items that fit for that controller specifically. You have to print off those in a certain amount in order to get the best value for the printing. If you just print out 2 models of this one controller and you have to buy the mold injected, or the injection mold, that injection mold is really expensive. Then that controller is its own separate SKU, so you have to pay for certain licensing for that. You have to do a bunch of other things, including tiny stuff you might not even thinking about, like instructing the people that are putting the controller together. You have to teach them how to build that controller together. Now you have to teach them how to do another controller. And it even spreads out into things like having multiple color options. These are things like I personally wasn't aware of these because I wasn't in production, but the rest of my team has been. So they are very well aware of these costs. So stuff like when you want to change the plastic to a different color, that is a big process. You might think, oh, just throw in, just put a little drop of food coloring in the color of the plastic or whatever. Because we maybe people think that, but you have to buy specific plastic balls that get melted down into a thing. And then does that plastic actually get strong enough? We want to make sure that the fail rate for these controllers is super, super low. And we want to make sure that when we bring a controller to somebody, no matter what color it is, the controller works. So when we have one of these test controllers done, we get it sent back to us, and we drop it about 57 times to make sure everything on it keeps working, because it's a controller. You're going to drop it. And you don't want to be sending these things out to people if it drops once and something inside snaps and it doesn't work again. So it's all those tiny little things you never think about. And it believe me, it's way more complex than that, but we are very well aware of those goals. And at the same time, we don't want to be a Kickstarter that says, oh yeah, we just needed $100 to make this controller, and then we don't deliver, right? It's got to be a controller that the moment we are confident in it delivering, if we say it can do anything, it does it, and then it gets delivered where people already know that they're going to like this thing when it's on the way to them. Because people use controllers, specifically gamers, we use controllers all the time. They're going to be well aware if they're using a bad one. So if we screw up anything in terms of the production process of this thing, then it's just not worth it to do it. I would rather see us just stop the project than not actually have everything perfect.
I have the best image right now of you guys like slaving away on this thing, just like working so tirelessly on it. You finally get the finished product in your hand. It looks fucking awesome. And you just start dropping it 57 times to see if you can break it.
You never think about it, right? It's like the tiny... You never think about these things, but, when you get the controller, you're going to take water and you're just going to dump it all over the controller to see if it'll actually survive a water dump. You got to do those kind of things.
How heartbreaking.
It's unfortunate, right?
You do.
But
so how much time do you spend like product testing? Like obviously development is one thing, but like testing a somewhat finished product, how do you put it through the paces and like what can this controller withstand up until a certain point? Like that's probably one of the most interesting things to me is like, it's one thing programming all the UI for it so you can change your controller sensitivity and invert your axes like I saw in there and programming it to work with other stuff, but it's like a whole other beast to actually test the damn thing and make sure it works if you drop it 57 times. So like how are you putting it through the paces? Yeah, like how are you putting it through the paces, like to make sure that it's
like 57 and you're good?
That's it.
You just hit that 57 number and you're like, yeah, works.
Well, it's like you just have to play. As funny as it is, you got to be a gamer. Like a regular person getting one of these controllers isn't really like a hardcore gamer might get this controller and just use it traditionally, and that might be fine. But personally, from my own experience, I own a lot of video game controllers. That's partially what Rerez is all about, is me looking at weird stuff, weird video game devices. So for me, it needs to stand up to like my strict standards about what a controller can do. Can it, like one of the things I hate are bad analog or joysticks. I really hate bad buttons. I remember using the Ouya gamepad, and the Ouya gamepad had the buttons slide underneath the shield, and they wouldn't like pop out after you slid them in, right?
Yes.
That's unacceptable. You can't have that happen while you're playing a game. So the model we have already doesn't do that. Because imagine how bad that would be if we sent these controllers out to like journalists that we have no control over, looking at the controller and then suddenly they're playing a game and slip and then it doesn't come back out. Well, that can't happen. So we had to make sure those kind of things don't happen. And that only happens when you play it with a controller hardcore. If this controller pulls away from your experience in any way when you're playing a game, then it's simply not a good controller.
Well, everyone heard it here first. So Rerez is N-Gage 2 better than the Ouya.
That's true. Like it's not hard to beat the Ouya though.
Well, do you think it'd be funny? I was gonna say it'd be funny if like 20 years from now, VidMe's taken off, YouTube's dead, and this YouTuber, this VidMe tuber comes along and makes this video on this like retro console controller, the all controller. Back in the day when there was all these different kind of systems and you needed to develop one controller to play them all, and he's reviewing this weird gimmicky controller that was supposed to play on everything. That'd be funny. That's a funny like.
But it's one of those. I think that's cool. It's one of those things, though. It's like, why hasn't anybody done this before? And obviously, there's a lot of technical hurdles, like you said, Shane, to be able to program it for both the Xbox and PlayStation platform because they have their own specific, way to talk to each other. But it's like, why hasn't anybody done this before? But this is kind of the first product of its kind, which is why I think, like we were saying before in our show prep, that it may hit a big number there, and I hope it does, because this is something that's really cool. Because a lot of the stretch goals I'm looking at right now are really cool. Xbox layout, like you said, is requested. Custom colors is at 4 million Canadian, and that makes sense because you need different ingredients.
And it's Canadian.
and it's everything, Canadian, so that's
then when you convert those to American numbers, it's actually pretty crazy. It's almost half that. It's insane. But
that'd be crazy.
It's honestly, when we're going into like designing things and trying to figure stuff out, you never think about the complexities of the product. Like there are hurdles that we hit that we didn't even think about. And if we had just gone to Kickstarter with a 3D model, I think that would have been a mistake, because we would have missed things that other people probably wouldn't have thought of when we came to it. And we started running into issues we never thought about, then we fixed those issues. So now when we go to production, we're already ready for a lot of those issues that we've already anticipated through actual production methods. Like the model we have, the model, this is the box that we have. Like, we've designed the box already to make sure that the controller actually fit in there. The controller itself has a mold injected 3D like case, or body. And you need to do that because there are material items, there are manufacturing issues that come along with that. With the Ouya, and I don't want to throw the Ouya under the bus. I've used the Ouya before, and I know a lot of people, whatever. The Ouya is a really neat console. I'm a fan of the way it was designed to an extent, but they were charging the same amount for that console and controller that we're charging for the controller, right? It takes a lot to design a controller that will work with a lot of devices, and I think if you're not aware of those costs, you might damage yourself when you're trying to make a product that people get worried about backing Kickstarters all the time because they're afraid that investment in that company might become unrewarded, and that's a real concern. And that's why we wanted to come here with like the best possible thing we could and have everything ready essentially to go.
And I think you've certainly done that. And I know I want one of these as soon as possible. If you can hook me up with a review copy, that would be fantastic. But we're going to cut to a break here, and we're going to come back. We might talk about some movies or whatever else we feel like. I know Shane here watched the Emoji Movie recently, and I would love to talk about that for a little bit. I just want to mention real quick that this episode of the Everything's Taken podcast is being sponsored by a YouTube channel called Twincadia. And if you like the Game Chasers or a little old show called the Game Quest or something that? I don't know. I think there was one made about 7 months ago. Imagine those kind of shows, but in a bar. It's actually really awesome. These guys own a bar and they have a lot of arcades, and they go on these crazy adventures, and you can see them taking shots together, drinking together, getting drunk together, and then running this bar. And it's definitely a good time full of crazy characters and big adventures. So I recommend checking out Twincadia on YouTube. And Eric.
Yes.
Check you out on YouTube, but that's not what I was going to say. What kind of music do you have for us
So
today?
In this installment of Retro Game Remix in Everything's Taken podcast, one of my favorite Super Nintendo era RPGs was Secret of Mana. And doing a song from Secret of Mana was one of my most requested songs. So I up and did one yesterday. So the very first thing that you hear when you pull the sword from the little waterfall lake area at Secret of Mana is called Into the Thick of It, which is like people say it's like one of the best pieces of music of all time. So I figured, why not? So here is my version of Into the Thick of It from Secret of Mana. So I hope you enjoy, and if you like it, please check me out at Retro Game Remix on YouTube. Okay, everybody, welcome back. Hope you enjoy the intermission break. That was Into the Thick of It from Secret of Mana. That video is not even out yet, so you got a little bit of a preview there a couple weeks ago.
Ooh, sneak peek. Well, you never know when this podcast will come out, knowing us and the way we take
No, it was
editing.
scheduled to go up on August 19th or something like that, so...
All right, so let's wrap it up with one final conversation, and let's try and keep it a little bit short. Earlier in the podcast, we talked about being open to other people's opinions and how much of a fantastic quality that is in someone. So everyone listening, bear that in mind as we go into this. You guys all know that I love the Switch, and I've said a bunch of times that I feel like it's going to do really well. It's probably going to do not as well as the Wii, but definitely better than the Wii U, definitely better than the GameCube. Shane feels a little differently on this. So, y'all have heard my opinion. Take it away.
Okay, so I like the Switch, all right? There's a lot there to like. Having the ability to take Mario Kart 8, to take any of those big like console-style games and take them with me anywhere, I love that. When Nintendo sent me this Nintendo Switch to review earlier before it actually came out, and I had Zelda, and I was at a hotel and I was playing Zelda, and I'm like, oh God, I get this. Like, this makes sense to me. But there's a couple of things about it that worried me from the beginning, and I'm starting to see those things trickle down. About like a year ago, I did like a soft prediction what the Switch would be. And it was kind of like a prediction of what the console would actually be, and I was pretty close to it. The only thing I didn't like get right was I thought it was going to be a system that you could plug up to your TV and then take it with you on the go, and it would just protect your TV. The only thing I didn't get was modular controllers on the sides, like that you could clip in. There's no way I would have known that.
Yeah.
But something I figured from an early standpoint was its third-party support, and we're starting to see third-party support have the exact same problem that the Wii U had. A long time ago with the Nintendo 64. The Nintendo 64 introduced a cartridge format, again, that was using, like the N64 had a really good video card in it, right? It had some really good graphics capabilities, a little bit weak on the RAM, but because it used a cartridge, it limited how much space they could use when they're developing games. So you had games that could only be produced on the PlayStation, and then companies that tried their best to get those kind of PlayStation experiences to work on the N64 had to cut out movie sequences. Not all the time, like in terms of Resident Evil 2, they actually got the game to kind of work on there, which is pretty insane. But in most cases, that wasn't how it worked. Nintendo 64 did not have that much space in the cartridge. With the GameCube, despite the fact the GameCube used DVD discs, they were mini discs, which again is a huge problem because if you have a game that's 4.7 gigs on PlayStation 2 or Xbox, the original, or even PC, that game now needs to be compressed onto a smaller disc. So even if the GameCube was arguably more powerful than the PlayStation 2, because you don't have as much space to use, you would have to put it on 2 discs. But this is a problem because you have your library of assets, which is your model work, your textures, your music, your sound effects. That library now has to be duplicated on 2 discs. So games that required a larger library could not fit on the GameCube, and they'd have to compress those assets really far down. That was the problem with the GameCube. When we got to the Wii didn't have that problem because it was using DVD discs. The only console out there that was using anything big was the Blu-ray discs on the PlayStation 3, and the Xbox 360 was competing, and the outliner there was literally Sony. Sony didn't make the console successful enough at the very beginning there, so having that large format wasn't that big of a deal. It didn't benefit them in any way. Onto the Xbox One and the Wii U and the PlayStation 4, they're all using a Blu-ray layer type technology. It's all pretty, like even the Wii U uses a Blu-ray disc, but it's just a modified version. But when the Switch came along, they didn't do that. The Switch has 2 massive problems. One, it doesn't have a big enough internal space when you buy it. Even if you were to put in a micro or an SD card or whatever to actually expand its memory, that's one thing. But the console itself being sold means any game that's sold has to take into consideration that it doesn't have enough space to be installed onto the system itself. So games like not Metal Gear Solid, but Grand Theft Auto 5 probably couldn't fit on the internal drive of the Switch. And there's updates, map packs, all that stuff that has to be taken into consideration. There's a whole bunch of things, and that works against it. Then the cartridges themselves are way more expensive to make than a Blu-ray disc. And we've already seen games that are being sold for a higher amount than on the Switch. This creates an influx of poor support for the third-party world out there. So a lot of companies that want to make games across all platforms are a lot less likely to make games on the Switch because of space limitations, because they'd have to make a different version of the game. But not only that, the Switch is a lot less powerful than the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One just because it's a portable system. And because of that, they have to make another version to work on the Switch. This starts to cause a huge problem when you start to think about what hurt the Wii U. See, with the Wii U, for some reason, we just didn't get support from third party. The Switch, the Wii U didn't sell fast enough. It didn't bring in the market they wanted. You had a different kind of controller setup. For instance, a very weird thing to think about with a regular Xbox One controller and PlayStation 4 controller, they have analog triggers on the back. Yeah, a Wii U didn't have that. Neither does the Switch. You don't even think about that, but that's kind of a big deal, because if you're doing a racing game where you can move a little bit for a little bit of gas or push it all the way down all the way, when you lose that, then a game has to be designed for gas on all the time. And so certain games couldn't be designed with that inherently in mind, because it's just a different controller. The Wii U gamepad is such a completely different controller compared to everything else. So in that sense, it's a very different design. But the Switch gamepad is very similar, but it still doesn't have analog joysticks. What ends up hurting them, though, is that by having a different controller to some degree, by having limited space, by having not the same kind of power, and that's what really hurt the Wii U at the beginning as well, too. The Wii U couldn't compete with the PlayStation 4 when the PlayStation 4 had such a huge advantage, because third-party developers were releasing games on that platform first, on PC, and then they could just easily drag and drop it over to the Xbox One, arguably with a little bit more work. It's not just like, move it over to one to the other. There is work that takes place there. But with the Switch, the biggest problem, and it still is its biggest problem, is that we can clearly see from this point out that third-party support is almost non-existent. Rockstar has talked about their latest game, which is Red Dead Redemption 2. There is no Switch version that they've discussed with us. We've seen the games that are coming out already. Nintendo's already made an announcement of what's coming out, and the biggest and best game we have coming out is the new Mario Odyssey game, which I think is a lot of people are probably going to enjoy. Like, I think you guys would agree with me on that. Yeah. Once that game comes out, what's next?
I will say, and we're going to wind it up, because this has been the longest episode of Everything Taken so far. But it's been the best one. Definitely my favorite. The best one, though. My absolute favorite. I want to thank Rerez so much for coming on board and talking our ears off today, because it was absolutely fantastic. It was great. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome, and long live the Switch.
We'll see. Obviously, I highly recommend checking out this all controller. I'm adoring it already. I don't even have it yet. But when it comes to his channel, I highly recommend watching Worst Plug and Play Console Ever 2. And maybe even go back to the first one, because that was really good. But that was the second video you did was one of the most enjoyable YouTube videos I've honestly seen. I enjoyed it so much.
Please don't watch the first Worst Console Ever. When I filmed that video, the console broke on me like 3 times, couldn't get it finished. And then I was so tired. When you see me recording it, go back and watch the first one. You'll see the power cord right behind me for the light that's above my head, because I was just like, whatever, let's get this done. It was so bad.
Oh,
well, thank you. Seriously, thank you. Eric, do you want to take us out today? I need to go have a shower and a bath and go to sleep for a while.
I know. Well, that's all right. Well, thanks again, Shane. Everybody check out Rerez. Everybody check out Wood at Beat 'em Ups, which is where you're watching this. And if you like the musical Intermission and you like Retro Game Remix, check out my latest video that just came out today, the Super Metroid title theme, where the last Metroid is in captivity and the galaxy may or may not be at peace once the Switch fails, inevitably. So check out the All Controller Kickstarter there. Information will be down in the description box below or in the comments. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you guys on the next Everything's Taken podcast, where if you're a kid now, you're a squid now. Thanks for watching.